If they're like most people, you have spent some time caught in that whole diet industry cycle.
Oh, for sure.
You're trying to figure out which trend is the most effective, calculating macros or, logging every single calorie.
And it's exhausting.
It is. And if you're being honest with yourself, that whole rigid measurement thing probably led to frustration, maybe some temporary results, and then ultimately burnout.
Always burnout.
Today, we are undertaking a deep dive into a really powerful source that argues that this frustration is actually proof of a fundamental flaw in the entire system.
Fascinating premise.
Their central idea is, well, it's arresting. The sheer number of new diets suggests, fundamentally, that the old ones have failed.
And that failure, according to the source, stems from one thing: treating the human being as a purely mechanical entity.
A machine of inputs and outputs.
Exactly. And that's why today we're stepping entirely out of that spreadsheet mentality. Our source proposes a holistic system that corrects this reductionist failure by recognizing the human as a complete entity.
A combination of.
A combination of body, soul, and mind. And this approach understands that you don't exist in a vacuum. You're an individual with, social and environmental duties.
It's a huge paradigm shift.
Yeah.
Moving from just measuring matter to measuring mindfulness and ethics.
It really is.
So here's our roadmap for this deep dive. We'll start with that philosophical critique of the machine metaphor. Then we'll move into the radical ethics of sourcing and environmental responsibility.
Then the practical daily rules.
And finally, we'll wrap it all up with the essential element of spiritual mindfulness and community. So let's get into it. Let's unpack this approach.
So when we look at conventional dieting, the focus is almost always on quantification, right?
Always. How many grams of protein, how much sugar?
What's the exact calorie count?
Yeah.
Our source argues that focusing on these measurable quantities is, well, it's desperately insufficient.
Because it isolates the physical body from the mind and soul.
Exactly.
And I think anyone who has ever been on a diet knows the consequence of that isolation.
You feel it.
You can get mechanical results, you lose the weight, but the moment stress hits, or you go off that super rigid plan.
It all comes rushing back.
The text actually calls this inevitable backlash intakasa. So instead of just calling it relapse, let's really explore that. Why does that reductionist approach basically guarantee intakasa?
Well, because it's often punitive. You are restricting and punishing a body you see as defective.
Instead of re-educating a mind and soul that are maybe just stressed or heedless.
Precisely. If your goal is just to change a number on a scale, you treat the body like a vehicle that needs less fuel. It's that simple.
But the emotional and psychological roots of why we eat.
When those aren't addressed, failure is just baked right into the system.
So the system proposed here isn't designed for temporary weight loss.
Not at all. Its goal is far more profound. Sustained uprightness, which the source calls ikamatsubahu.
Ikamatsubahu, sustained uprightness. That suggests the real goal is character and endurance, not just how you look. So how does recognizing that individual complexity, body, soul, and mind, how does that actually enforce long-term uprightness?
It creates a sense of duty. If your body is just a fuel container, you feel no duty to it beyond, just keeping it running.
Right.
But if your eating habits are tied to your mental clarity and your spiritual peace, your soul and mind, then consistency becomes this moral and mental imperative.
Not just a physical struggle against cravings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The system is holistic, so the results are sustained. You are managing a complex ecosystem, not just trying to optimize a piece of machinery.
So the core takeaway here is that the moment you treat your body like a machine, you abandon the very things that make sustained self-management possible. It demands we stop asking, how much should I eat? And start asking, how should I live?
That's the question.
Okay, so if we agree that the body isn't a machine that fundamentally changes what we choose to eat, where does this framework demand we start?
Well, the text makes it clear this whole journey starts long before the food ever, hits your plate.
So where's step one?
Step one is an ethical mandate. It's rooted in this ancient wisdom that defines human life beyond just material consumption. Food has to be halal, meaning it's lawful in how it's acquired, and tayyib.
Tayyib, meaning good, wholesome, pure.
Right. And this isn't just about avoiding poisons. It's about the integrity of the entire food chain.
So halal and tayyib set a baseline. But the source goes even further by saying we have to avoid usurped or stolen food, which they call muhtasib.
And this is where the framework becomes extremely radical.
How so?
It is radical The source explicitly says that the usurper might be an individual, a company, or even a state.
Whole state, wow.
Yeah, if that food was acquired unjustly, if someone's rights were violated in its production, it is inherently detrimental to the person eating it, no matter the calorie count.
Okay, but that level of ethical tracing seems almost impossible in our modern, global supply chain. I have to push back a little here.
Of course.
How realistic is it for the average person to trace whether a company or a state stole the resources used to grow their coffee beans, for example?
The core intent is awareness. I mean, the source gives specific prohibitions that demand action. It says you must avoid food where children are exploited or where farmers are enslaved.
So even if you can't know everything, you have to try.
Exactly. Perfect knowledge is impossible, but the requirement is to make a conscious effort to narrow that gap of ignorance. It's an ethical striving. For you, the learner listening, this is a revolutionary thought. Your personal health is directly tied to global human rights.
That puts a serious responsibility on the consumer, and that responsibility extends right into the environment too, right?
Absolutely. The system demands that we avoid food that harms the environment and exhausts the earth. It sees the earth not as an endless resource pit, but as a community member to be respected.
And from this really high-level ethics, we get some very practical sourcing advice.
We do.
First, there's the human element. Be agreeable and easygoing with the person selling you the food.
Maintain ethical conduct in the transaction itself.
Then there's just logistical common sense. Prioritize local products and narrow your sourcing circle as much as you can.
Mm-hmm.
And I really appreciate this final sourcing tip. Eat what is in season, summer products in summer, winter products in winter.
Right.
I mean, that seems like common sense for better taste, but what benefit does the source assign to it beyond just flavor?
It connects you to the environment's natural rhythm. By respecting seasonality, you avoid the environmental stress of high-energy, out-of-season production.
And you align your body with the natural cycles of your local environment.
Exactly. It's another step away from the machine mindset, where every ingredient is available instantly, year-round, regardless of the environmental cost.
Okay, so let's move from sourcing to the actual discipline of eating.
The physical rules here, they really center on moderation and self-control. The primary physiological rule is foundational, and it's deceptively simple.
Which is?
Eat only if hungry, and stop eating before feeling full.
Ah, that space between satisfaction and fullness, that's where most conventional diets completely fail because we're trained to push right past it.
We are.
For anyone listening who finds that line hard to judge, the source provides that famous and incredibly helpful division of capacity.
The rule of thirds.
Exactly. The suggestion is to divide your stomach into 3 parts. 1/3 for food, 1/3 for drink, and 1/3 for the breath or the self.
And that last third, the breath, that often confuses people. It doesn't mean literal air.
No, it means leaving capacity so you don't feel weighed down. It ensures you have room for ease, digestion, and lightness. You're maintaining your capacity for awareness.
It's about ensuring the act of eating doesn't stop you from engaging in other activities, mentally or physically. You shouldn't need a nap right after a meal.
Right. And beyond quantity, the focus shifts to preparation and digestion.
Yes, the source emphasizes the importance of thorough chewing or masticating well.
Not just to maximize nutrient uptake, but specifically it says to avoid stressing the stomach. And I think everyone listening can relate to that feeling of eating too quickly when you're stressed. Does the source see stressing the stomach as purely physical, or is there a mental part to that?
It's both. Rushed eating is a sign of heedlessness, which we'll get into more in a moment. You just aren't present. And physically, by not breaking down the food, you force your body to expend excess energy,
Drawing resources away from the mind and soul.
which directly violates that rule of sustaining uprightness. And, unlike restrictive diets that eliminate whole food groups, this system emphasizes variety.
Eat all types of food and accustom your taste buds to that variety.
The focus is adaptation and appreciation, not elimination.
And that appreciation is enforced by these powerful rules against waste and excess. The source labels them as rough and top tier.
And waste in this system isn't just a financial error, it's a full-on ethical failure.
You should save leftovers for the next meal. Never discard food heedlessly.
And this final rule in this section is maybe the most transformative, behaviorally speaking.
That is.
Do not criticize food. If you desire it, eat it. If it's unfamiliar but wholesome, train yourself to eat it. Otherwise, you just leave it alone without judgment.
Wow. I mean, that cuts right through our modern culture of constant food judgment, the counting, the labeling, the shaming.
It replaces all that judgment with gratitude and acceptance. You either appreciate what's in front of you and eat it, or you respectfully decline.
So this section, this is where the soul and mind really get their full due.
It is. The social element is paramount. The text says to eat in a group whenever you can, especially with family,
So eating becomes a communal bonding ritual,
rather than a solitary mechanical chore.
and the mental demand is very clear. Do not be heedless or gafil.
You have to be present, fully aware while you're eating.
We're talking no rushed lunches in front of your email, no distracted scrolling on your phone. You have to be mentally there.
Because consumption is seen as a profound, intentional act,
hmm
and that presence enables the reflection mandate.
What's that?
While you're eating, you're encouraged to contemplate the magnitude of creation, the shapes, the colors, the taste of the food, and to actively remember all the stages the food went through before it reached you.
The sun, the rain, the farmer.
The transportation, everything.
And by contemplating the farmer and that whole journey, you immediately generate gratitude. This leads to very specific action points.
hmm
You have to thank the person who prepared the meal. The appreciation has to be externalized.
And, what's more, you're encouraged to participate in preparing the meal whenever you can.
Which helps ease the burden, but critically, it increases your own presence and awareness of the effort involved.
You stop seeing just a finished product and you start seeing a disciplined process.
And this discipline shows up in specific table manners rooted in the source's cultural tradition.
These aren't just arbitrary rules, they are tools for intentionality. For example, saying Bismillah before eating.
Or bismillah at its beginning and end, if you forget.
Right, is an invocation that reminds you who the ultimate provider is, and it removes that sense of entitlement.
And likewise, eating with the right hand, eating from what is nearest to you. These are practical disciplines of order and respect.
And finally, the cycle of consumption has to extend beyond your own table. The system requires you to give food as a gift to neighbors and friends, and to give charity sadaqah to the poor and needy. Consumption isn't a private endeavor. It requires giving back to the community that sustains you.
This holistic system sets a very high ethical and quality bar, which brings up a really critical, practical question.
Okay.
What if you can't afford food that meets all these requirements? What advice does the source offer someone whose means are limited?
The advice on scarcity is deeply human-centered. If your means are limited, you're advised to work to improve your circumstances, but at the same time, you have to ask for blessing baraka in what you currently have.
So it's not just magical thinking.
No, it's a request for the means you possess to be sufficient, optimized, and productive. It's a spiritual contentment that maximizes utility.
And the most important behavioral mandate when dealing with scarcity is maybe the hardest one.
Which is,
You should look at those less fortunate than you and maintain gratitude for what you have.
it shifts your focus from what you're lacking to your relative advantages, and it prevents bitterness and resentment from setting in.
Which brings us right back to the central philosophy.
The body is emphatically not a machine measured by matter. It is body, soul, and mind. The entire mission of this framework is to align those three components through lawful, good food, and conscious consumption.
Now, the program might sound straightforward, but it requires deep perseverance.
It demands persistence. Persistence until you are fully aware, non-heedless, and truly grateful. That's the heavy lift required for sustained success.
And the ultimate reward for that perseverance.
It's a state of deep contentment. The source concludes that once you achieve this state of gratitude and awareness, then the concept of a bite or two becomes sufficient to sustain the body as intended,
You're no longer driven by this perpetual hunger.
but by intentional nourishment.
So we started by acknowledging the widespread frustration with conventional dieting, and we moved pretty swiftly away from that mechanical obsession with counting calories. Our deep dive has shown us a framework defined by rigorous ethical sourcing, precise rules of conscious consumption, spiritual reflection, and profound community gratitude.
What's so fascinating here is how the source ties personal health directly to global ethics and the integrity of the supply chain.
You can't pursue sustained uprightness ikomat sulbahu while actively or passively supporting exploitation or environmental degradation.
They're completely linked.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, navigating the grocery store tonight?
Well, here's a final thought. If the ultimate goal of eating is the uprightness of the self, how does consciously focusing on the ethical efforts of the farmer and the cook change the actual nutritional value of what you consume regardless of the laboratory calorie count.
So is that ethical effort itself a necessary ingredient?
Something to mull over until our next deep dive.
Food for thought indeed. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.